welcome back to another episode of the Healing for the Soul podcast. I'm your host, Heather. We have our co host here, Shannon, today. She's one of our coaches at Soul Healer Institute. Thank you so much for being here today, Shannon. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. You want to hear the truth?
Yeah, girl, that's what we're all about here. Raw experiences. Just let us
Taxes
know.
are due in like a day. They're not done. This eclipse is kicking my ass. And probably because I like to brag, like, oh, if people who are working on their spiritual path, when these retrogrades, when these things happen, like they're okay, they're a little shook, but like doesn't, like I'm always on my center. Not today. Not this time. Not this time. The chaos got my ass.
Yeah, the eclipse energy, it got me a little bit too. And it's funny, but my experience, it's so cool how sometimes we can go so low because of whatever, like something outside of us or like our environment or whatever. Things are just not on the surface, they're just not looking good, right? And it can bring us down, like you were describing a little bit before we started. It can feel like you're being dragged down into another dimension.
Yeah.
And I know I felt that last week with the eclipse energy coming up. And I'm the same way. I typically don't follow when Mercury is in retrograde or anything like that.
It's in
and for the most
retrograde,
part,
Heather. It was in retrograde on the 1st, Heather.
I wouldn't know. I mean, maybe. And so sometimes, like, that's just me. Like, I don't actually usually make fun of the astrology people. I'm like, quit blaming the moon for your problems. Do your shadow work. I'm like, the moon is not your
it's
problem.
Real. Maybe it's real because I, fully believe, but
subscribe.
I
subscribe to it. See, I never subscribe to it, but I'm not saying that it's not real. It's one of those things where I'm like the devil's advocate, and like anytime like dogma is in place on anything, I'm like, I automatically like skirt and then like kind of like roll away because I'm like, it's not always true. But it can be, it doesn't mean it can't be true.
I think it's more like a mirror. Like it's not like anything bad's gonna happen to you. It's just like a check-in from the universe with a big fat mirror that and
and I think
you
it
can't get away from it. Like it's now there's no distraction. This is how it is for me anyways. And I'm like, oh, okay. Personally, something that happened to me, someone very close to me betrayed me. This was a female friend that I have been friends with for almost a decade. We've had our ups and downs just like anything else, but it was something that was so big that I don't know that I can continue the friendship, which is heartbreaking, you know. But now sitting in this energy, like with this big event that had happened, I'm just basically now seeing the progression of that I was in denial of or I didn't want to see for 10 years, and now it's like so in my face that I cannot deny it. And now I have to take action, so it's really a phenomenal, like the human brain is phenomenal to me, like the things that we don't want to see that we will not see if we're not ready to see them.
Yeah, I was gonna speak to that. I was gonna piggyback on that because that instantly reminded me of like, and before we got on and you were telling me a little bit about your friend and the situation, you were talking about how it feels like a divorce. And as soon as you said what you said just now, it brought me back to, there was so many red flags in my ex-husband, but I was so in love at the time and naive and like just having a good time that even though after the fact, hindsight being 2020, even though after it all like laid out and I was like, oh my God, this happened and this happened and this happened. And how did I not put two and two together? And like you're saying, sometimes we just don't. And it's my personal opinion or my bias from my own personal experience in the spirit realm and in inner healing and manifestation and all of this is that you're not supposed to see it.
Yeah,
It would
I
not
agree.
serve your story. It would not serve you, your life, your story, your hero's mission, your star potential. It would not serve those things if
Your
you
hero's
knew.
mission, I like that. I like that one,
Yeah.
Heather.
And because all of these things, even though on the surface they feel like shit, like divorce feels like crap, your friends betraying you, it feels like shit. All of it is serving your hero's mission and your bigger picture of
Yeah,
the story, like,
yeah,
and it's just so beautiful. It's not beautiful, it doesn't feel beautiful, and you can't really see the beauty in it until maybe later or after
yeah.
the fact and after things have cleared up and the storm has kind of calmed down, right?
Mhm.
But it really is. It's just it's just everything that's happening, good, bad, whatever you're deeming it, whatever you're
It's
judging it to
literally
be.
part of the
It's
evolution, even if
all
it feels like you're
happening.
going backwards, like, it's like that rubber band
Yes.
bow and arrow thing, like, then you're gonna propel, and I feel it, and honestly, I've been holding on to certain people in my life that I know do not reflect where I want to go. I'm not judging them or
Yeah.
their journey at all, I just know with expansion, I can't take them with me,
Oh my
and that's
gosh,
really difficult.
that reminds me of just to be some comedic relief here because it just came up into my vortex. That reminds me, there's this like video of Cat Williams of all people
I
saying,
love him.
"You have an allegiance to losers," and people
I
laying out like,
shut up, Heather. That came on my feed yesterday. It was like, you have, it wasn't just an allegiance. He was like, you have I don't know, like a bad habit
yeah,
or something like to having an
it
allegiance to losers. And I'm like you know,
oh,
it's like calling me out. Listen, I've had 3 divorces, 4
yeah.
engagements, you know. I have no problem
No,
being like, I don't deserve this. I'm worth more than this. I'm out. I'm outie. I don't care. I don't care if there was a ring. I don't care. But I'll tell you, it's blowing my mind right now because I've always surrounded myself with very strong, loyal women that I knew I really don't. I have a certain type of girl that I will hang out with, and it's always all my best friends have always been like super down to earth females that are strong, independent, secure. There's no cattiness, there's no competition, there's no, I just can't do that. I don't do that. And so, like, this is the first time in my life where I'm realizing, like, even your relationships that are not romantic, even your relationships that are, with the same sex, a friendship or whatever the partnership or relationship is, like, it can be toxic and you can need to make those choices. And it's just, I don't think it's ever
yeah.
happened to me on the feminine side. So,
It's interesting that you're bringing this up, and it's interesting to hear that you're not used to that because I would say the opposite is very true for me. I have not had a female connection best friend since well, until I started my business. And then when I started my business and I met some clients, I've been able to form some really amazing connections with female energies in my life. And you and Sue and Ellie and many others are, to name those examples. Um, but the few friends that I've had throughout my life and the few people that I've been able to call like my best friends that I spent all my time with,
mhm.
I have a womb mate. I have one womb mate that I call her my womb mate because I was born right after her and our moms were like tight. And
Oh, so you're like
um,
sisters.
yes, she is still in my life. She's like the only feminine energy relationship that has been ride or die till the end, even though we don't see each other or talk all that much. So shout out to her. But every other female energy that I have encountered, that got that personal and close, and I spent a lot of time with, and I trusted with everything in me, every single time it ended very, very badly. and it was like a divorce. And
I
so
wonder why.
that was a pattern. You know what's so funny?
I think I would
The
have that
pattern
if I hung out with girly girls that were catty, or like the typical female. I think that that would happen to me. And I whatever for whatever reason, I just attracted like these very strong, secure, almost a little bit more on the masculine end. And it's been great. Like never
Well,
had.
I think for me, I wasn't attracting like a specific type of person because I've kind of flocked with all kinds of people. Like I've always felt like a chameleon, like I could fit in with any type of group.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Me too.
and so these girls, I don't think it was like a personality, a type, or like a personality type that I was attracting. I think it was more so it 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 leaned more on the codependency,
Mhm.
scales because I was very codependent growing up, because my parents were divorced and my mom was not emotionally available, and my dad was, like, overly available for me, and so he's very
Uh-huh.
clingy, and but obviously, as I got older and older and older, I didn't wanna hang out with my dad so much, so I would find these girls that also shared a similar codependency,
Okay.
frequency, and so we would codependent together, and like we would be attached at the hip together. And, as an adult now, even though, shit hit the fan with all of them, I am so thankful that I had so much love with them because I did. I
Yeah.
know that they loved me. I loved them. Like it was a very strong female connection and relationship, but it was very codependent and it did end very badly. But again, I think it was all supporting the hero's story. And in my case, I'm the hero of my own story, just like everybody is the hero of their own story. And so it was supporting me because otherwise I could have, I was very depressed, very, very depressed, especially as a teenager, young adult, moving into my 20s. And I think if I had not had those codependent female relationships, I think it could have been a bad situation for me. It was part of the thing that kept me going and kept me
Yeah.
like staying, even though I was very depressed and I had a very low self esteem. It was those codependent relationships that God set up for me, even though it ended up being bad or, ending not great. And
Yeah.
that sucked. And it was very hurtful. It was supporting me and in my
Yeah.
well
We
being
always we
ultimately.
always get what we need at the time. And
Yes.
I think that's something that's just really hard for humans to the concept. Like we really want things to be permanent. We want things to be finite. We want there to be a beginning, and
We don't like
sometimes
the
like the
change.
end comes before you, and you can't deal when it's those interpersonal relationships are like so vital to our survival. Like back in
Yeah.
the day you didn't survive without your village. Our
Right.
DNA doesn't know that. So it's like when you form these relationships and then for whatever reason your evolution brings you apart, that's just a really tough thing to let go of, you know? It is
Yeah.
like it's like a breakup. Like I can't really compare it to anything else where it's like I could choose to stay in this. I could choose to, overlook everything, but I know it's not gonna be the same or for my my highest good. And
Yeah.
it's just like, the loss is devastating because it's like it's different when you don't choose it, you know? Like, when you're faced with information, then you have to make the choice, but,
Right. When it's
that's
something that
how
you
it
didn't
goes. Yeah, it's like we're not meant to be in everyone's life forever. We're not meant to continue,
well, and there's something really beautiful about it. And if you think in terms of you being the star of your own movie, and you think about these experiences, or you think about your favorite movies, and you think about the characters in those movies that are facing these really difficult decisions or these hard times, what you find and like the whole goal, like I actually took a class and I learned can't remember his name, or I'd love to credit it. I know his name is Michael, but I can't remember his last name, so Michael is irrelevant. So anyways, he teaches people how to write good movies. And so basically all movies follow a specific formula.
Right.
And one of the main formulas is there's a journey for the main character that the
Right.
main character goes on. And it goes from like one day he's living his life this way, and then something really big happens and it triggers this revolution of change, this evolution of change and involvement for the main character. And what that change essentially brings him to is it gets him from this separateness of identity, and he's like really like caught up in his like original identity, but it's not really like his pure truth of like who he is. And then this big change happens, like a divorce or whatever
Yeah.
happens. And along the way, along that journey, he goes from identity to essence, and he steps into his essence of his being, and he finds like the truth of who he is. And then all of a sudden, let's say that it was a love story. In the beginning, he's getting a divorce, and then identity to essence goes along. Oh, we just watched Happy Gilmore. That's a really good example. In the beginning, Happy is like, I'm a hockey player. I want this girl. I want this. And he's like demanding all of this stuff. And then the girl breaks up with him. He can't get into a hockey game. But then people are like loving his golf game. And he's like, I'm not a golfer. He just won't accept who he is. He just won't accept it. And the longer he goes through, he starts to accept, oh my gosh, like I'm not who I thought I wanted to be.
Mhm.
And then he meets the real girl he's supposed to be with. And it's just a really beautiful movie. And he gets
Yeah,
everything that he wanted.
I love that, and I love the analogy of a movie because, like, that's really parallel to, like, what we experience. I also feel like, we live and die in this lifetime so many times.
Yeah.
I can really, if you, like, look
Yeah.
back at your life, it's like, I can pinpoint the death of that old life and the
Right.
birth of a new evolution, and it's literally sections of time, like screenshots of evolution and me becoming someone completely different, my life shifting and, you know, in very extreme ways.
Yeah.
Like, I when I was writing my movie before I came here, I made sure everything was juicy, extreme,
Right.
life
Well,
and
and you know
trauma.
what's so funny? I love that you mentioned that we have multiple lifetimes. And because I've been really studying, like I've been obsessed for a long time with like quantum mechanics, quantum physics,
Yeah,
and different timelines, realities, dimensions, universes, all of this stuff, this multi-dimensional idea. And the deeper I go down these rabbit holes, the more I understand. I love that you said that we have multiple lives in this one life. And we really do, because and I saw this really funny picture and it made me laugh so hard because I resonated with it. And it said the time lapse between 2017 and 2024 is unnatural. I've had like at least four lives
yeah,
between
yeah,
2017 and 2024. And I absolutely have had at least four or more lives since
yeah,
2017.
mhm,
And including a massive career shift in that
yeah,
period. So it was so crazy to hear that. And I'm like, and what I'm learning is I don't know what movie I was watching. I think it was a very popular movie on Netflix. It was about like this virtual reality, and really it was about how back in the 70s a woman working like trying to connect to aliens called aliens here, but it took like 50, 70 years before the aliens could actually make it to us because the time difference from space and like
uh-huh,
so. And the idea is like, okay, so some Chinese woman has already called aliens to us, and like this is why technology is here and it's just evolving and all this other stuff. And it's like, how crazy is that? Like somebody from the 70s has already determined like what's going to happen to us now in the 2020s, or something
yeah,
like
it's
that, or whatever.
crazy. It's
It was
crazy
so
to think
cool.
about. I know, like, the stars, like, wherever the stars are, it's, like, weird looking at them from, I
But
think
hundreds of years later.
right, hundreds of
Yeah,
years later. Like,
it
that's
just
not where
doesn't
they're
make
at
any
right
sense.
now.
Yeah, and so
Yeah,
basically the movie that I'm talking about, or the series, it's There, it's about a bunch of scientists. They're targeting scientists specifically. And so one of the scientists, she dabbles a lot in like timelines and dimensions and realities. And the way she is describing it is how it's all on one plane. But like if you take like a tortilla and you rip the tortilla into parts, you can peel it into like, 10
Micro
different
parts. Yeah.
micro parts. And then, of course, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. So, if you think about it, me right here, just me as a single individual, I am carrying multiple realities and dimensions just within me because there's a whole ecosystem and universe happening just to keep me functioning as one big complete being, right? And so, and then beyond that, like our if you look out in your yard, there's a whole nother dimension going out in the grass and in the trees and and then past lives are like if you listen to teachings of like Buddha or any one of the major spiritual leaders, and Buddha specifically, he talks about in his meditation how he experienced being everyone all
That's
at once.
that's
And
what I
I
do.
used
That's
to,
what I realized. I tapped in, I realized I was fragmented in my
yeah,
healing journey, and I wanted to integrate. And as I spent more and more time alone with myself, meditating, doing my deep inner work that was really just in a meditative state, I realized time could collapse.
yeah,
Not only can I connect to every single part of me in whatever dimension of this life, but everything I have ever lived. And then also whatever ancestors I've had is all still here. I have access to all of that. And being able to pull what I need when I need from wherever, because I can't even, we can't even really fathom what that means. But like, I know, like, when I need something, some part of me somewhere has it, and I'm going to take it
right.
and then integrate it. And it literally works. Like,
Well, here's where and of course, like I just find these things interesting. Sometimes we can't verify everything, but they're fun to go down the rabbit hole on doing. And so, like when Buddha said that, I was leaning into, and I think Buddhists and in that culture, I think they lean heavily on like reincarnation and stuff. And so for a while, I really like enjoyed that concept of reincarnation. I was like, oh yeah, I've lived 100 times, and I was this, and I was that. And what I was shown was actually that that's not necessarily true. Reincarnation is not necessarily true. There's only ever one of us, but and again, that's you can't verify this stuff. So that I don't place dogma on anything that I'm saying right now, but it's an interesting, like what I was shown was interesting. So I want to share that. And so what I was shown is that we're not reincarnated. We haven't been these things. It's just there we are always everything all at once because
right,
consciousness
right,
is just everything. So
right.
consciousness was the Egyptian goddess that you remember. Consciousness was the mermaid that you remember. Consciousness is Shannon right now. So I can intuitively connect to
Like,
Shannon and her
basically,
lineage and her
we are everything.
we're
We
everything
see
all at
everything
once.
that's
And
happened, everything all
we
in
are
one.
everything.
And if
Yeah, we
that's
are everything that
true,
we have. Yeah,
pull from, you can pull
right.
from wherever. But I do believe in
It was a really cool
incarnation.
experience.
My daughter watches a show, I forgot what the name of it, but it's basically like little kids, like little 3, 4, 5-year-olds that remember their past life. And they'll
Yeah,
talk about, like, they'll have a name. Like, were they that person? I don't know, but for whatever reason, coming into this life,
they're very connected
they're
to
very
they
connected to
remember.
it. So, like, who knows if it was them, but I like that concept better. Sorry, I have a hair in my
Yes,
head. That it's like we
mhm,
are everything, you know? We are everything, all of
yeah,
it. We're experiencing all of it.
yeah, we're
We're not
everything that
there's
has
no
ever been and ever will
separation.
be all at once,
Yeah, there's no separation.
and that's why yeah, and that's why the psychic, people there's such a phenomenon of psychic experiences, and I think it's because the future is already happening in another dimension, so we can pull stuff from that stuff. So like the past has already happened. We can pull that information and the future is already happening. We can pull from that information. And I just think it's super cool to think in terms of everything that has ever been and ever will be, we are already it. And so when you are
Yeah.
connected to that and when you are aligned with that and when you are because it's one thing to understand the truth of that and to experience the truth of that is a completely different thing. So when you start experiencing the truth of that, and for me, my path to get to the experience of that truth and that experience of experiencing everything that has been and everything that will be all at once and mind-blowing experiences, for me it was the path of inner healing, it was the path of self-discovery, it was the path of inner just trying to understand who I am, the spirit, trying to understand the spiritual laws of the universe, whether they're true or not. They all hold a nugget of what I think the ultimate truth is. And I shared a picture on my Facebook the other day and it was so cute. I loved it. It had Jesus and Buddha and aliens and all kinds of other things. And it was like one truth, many songs. And that's just the
Mhm.
truth of it. There are so many individuals who have a perspective on the truth of the universe and themselves. And there is only one truth, but because I might say it a certain way, it can be translated wrong and it can be thought wrong and opinions and judgments attached to it. And that's what's happened to Jesus. That's what's happened to Buddha because none of those people spoke English. I hate to break it to anybody, but they didn't speak English. And so everything that they said has been translated 100 different times and 100 different ways. And it's kind of like playing a game of telephone with somebody who lived before us thousands and thousands of years ago.
Yep.
And so it's it can be misconstrued and confusing and especially and that's why I'm so against placing dogma on anything because that is the minute when things get corrupted is when we place this dogma on this is the truth and this is how it is and you can't stray out of these lines because nothing is black and white, everything is gray.
Yeah.
Everything is everything all at once, it's everything.
Yeah. I think obviously we have like these specific experiences in the 3D. We are this avatar, but that is like the very like ending of where our comprehension goes. Like we're talking about these concepts, but really like there's no way for any human being to really grasp the entirety of like zero separation. Like that you really you're just this life and this experience that you're having is real. And I really feel like we had a lot to do with it. Like I feel like I picked this time and space to experience everything in this physical form with this physical mind, with this heart, to co-create. But when you start to like expand a little bit, you see so much more outside of just yourself. And then all of a sudden things don't matter. Like your 3D little world becomes very insignificant. I think that's why you see, monks and other people like sell everything they have and go backpacking through Europe or whatever, because they realize the temporary nothingness really of little piece of this little fraction of time that we're living in right now, and that it means really
Well, and
as much as
and
we
I
think it
agree.
does.
And I agree with what you're saying there too. And it's so funny. I'm again devil's advocate here because I'm in a space of like non-duality. So this nothingness and it's not that serious and we can stop taking things so serious, but also it means everything. It means everything and it means nothing all at once. And I think it is I think like that's when I say that I'm experiencing that truth of I my experience isn't important and it's massively important, like all at once. Like, and there is
Yeah, there's
no
always well, that is duality. It's like both sides of the coin being one. You can't have one without the other, you know?
right. Well, my what I'm saying, the experience of it, it's a little bit hard to explain, but it's like all of that disappears of whether it's important or not important, and we're just zoning in on whatever matters to us, and we're just
Right.
like, so for me anyways, that's been my experience, when because I've been down the rabbit hole of my existence is not that important, the nothingness. And then I've been on the other side where I'm like, I have to save the world and I'm very important and I'm going to change everything, right? Like I've been on both sides of the coin. And now I'm in this really strange dimension of non-duality. It feels like that's the best way to describe it, where neither are true. They're both true at the same time. And it's like everything is merged into
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
What's
yeah, for sure.
left, and there's a quote or somebody that says, take away your likes, your opinions, your personality, and see what's left. What's left is you. Take away you, and then what's left, and that's consciousness, and
Yeah,
that's just or nothingness. It's it's everything and nothingness all at once, and it's so funny. And
integrated.
I also saw this.
It's duality
I
integrated into one.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I saw this this picture or something, and it was talking about atheists. And I was an atheist for many years, and it's so funny. I feel equally atheist and equally spiritual now these days. All at once, it's like nothingness and consciousness all at once. And then I saw this, and I was like, oh wow, I accept atheist even more, the label atheist even more, because it's like, what do atheists believe when we die? Where does atheists believe we come from? Nothing. We come from nothing, according to atheists. And where does atheists think that we go?
That's why
Nothing.
everyone's
And then
right.
somebody was like,
Everyone's
okay,
right
so
for
atheists,
them. That's it's like
exactly.
it's all where we're at in the, in the
But
process.
listen,
So like
this
no
is what's
one's
so funny
wrong.
about. But this is what's so funny about what they're saying. And so any other spiritual teachings say we come from consciousness or source, and then when we die we merge back into consciousness and source. So atheists say we come from nothing, and when we die we go back to nothing. So essentially we are merging back into our creator regardless.
Uh,
And so
yeah, that's
that
why I was
is
like
just
no
that
one's
so
wrong. No one's wrong here.
exactly.
And and I think like that's the whole point is to let everyone be exactly where they're at and not to judge it, not to judge yourself. Let yourself be exactly where you're at. Because if you're living life and you're flowing, everything is going to just morph into what it is and where it is that you're going to go. Like it doesn't have to be a finite like label or judgment on any of it. Those are the people I see that are the
Well,
happiest.
yeah, and it's kind of, again, bringing up, because I watched Happy Gilmore recently, so it's easy to bring up that example. It doesn't matter what you try to fix, change, or control. At the
Mhm.
end of the day, your destiny is your destiny,
Yeah.
and you might try to go on many loops to break your destiny, but you can look at yourself like an airplane, and you're set to autopilot. So even if you try to flip the plane and do all kinds of stuff, it's eventually going to recalibrate and bring you right back to your destination that it's been programmed to go to. And so, like, Happy Gilmore, he had a destiny to fulfill, and he had these things that he was going to experience. He had to get the thing for the grandma, he had to do the thing for the girl, and he had a way he wanted to do it. And God or consciousness or nothingness was like, no, you're going to do it like this. And it didn't matter what he did. And so I'm not saying, that it's not an amazing experience to try to make plans or to set goals. I don't necessarily feel that way. I still set goals and make plans. Whether they last or they happen is irrelevant. That half the time they do, half the time they don't. Right? It's not consistent, because
Yeah.
ultimately whatever is meant for me is going to come to me.
Yeah.
And
It
and anything outside of that, anything that's not supporting my hero's mission, it's not coming.
yeah. It's just the attachment to the how that messes
Yes.
us up. Like you can do all the goals and everything else, you as long as you're in a flow and you're not attached to the how. I personally have always been like a woman of action. I
Yeah.
can't remember what my chart is Aries, but like especially when it comes to business, I'm like I have a finite goal. I have my mission, and I put this together and I execute. And I'm not like that anywhere else in my life, but for whatever reason in business I am. And so for me, that's how I was moving when I first built my business, and I realized 2 or 3 years in, like, no matter what I had planned, no matter what doctors I had gotten in, I got into these, like, the top high like, top tier, like, celebrity, OBGYN practice, and they took my cards, which was huge. And then I spent a whole bunch of money, like, on marketing and, like, like, the mommy magazine, whatever. All these things I had did. None of those things, and which were not easy and took me a lot of time, none of those things is what really propelled my success. And it took me about 5 years to sit back and be like, whoa, I spent so much money, so much time, so much angst, you know, and my team too, for this, like, none of that was really what propelled things. It was something out here in the ethers that came in and, like, whatever.
Yeah.
And so
No.
finally, it took me a minute, but I finally got that concept. Like, it it it's not so much about action, but you're right. Like, you do have to have your goals. You do have to have you have to be at least thinking about what it is that you want and putting energy there. But the trick, and where a lot of people get lost in manifestation, is holding too tightly to the
Yeah.
outcome or when or how. Like, to
Yeah.
really truly let go, but you can't really do that without believing it's going to manifest, you know?
Well,
But, like, we
I
get
read
one
the
more thought,
book.
like, we can move, like, when in the end, when it's all done and you get your manifestation, you realize it was literally, and I know it sounds cheesy, like it was the journey, but it really is the enjoyment and flow of that time, when you decide you really want or need something and you get it. It's like the getting it is not the highlight. The highlight is the
Is the
process and
journey.
flowing through,
Yeah.
having fun while you're getting it. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about, like, the confusion or the trick, the struggle that comes typically with a lot of us on the manifestation journey when we're, let's say we've had a vision, because I know that that's how my manifestation journey started. Is I was downloaded with a vision of, like, this thing that I was going to experience, and it set forth the motion of the ideas and the imagination train to go that way. But we can get
Imagination
so
train. You keep
yeah,
you
the
keep
imagination
using these
train. We
words that I'm gonna steal. I love that, the
I know, you're
imagination
stealing.
train.
So it starts that trigger of the imagination train, and the wheels are turning, but our egos and, like, our minds start to say, oh, it's got to happen right now. I'll have more fun. I'll be happier if it would happen right now or quickly. And I'll tell you, my as an entrepreneur, my mind gets caught up in these stories, and it's so easy to feel defeated and to give up and to try to walk away. And something that has been proven to me, especially in my career that I am in right now, is I'm exactly where I'm meant to be.
Mhm.
And I know that because every time, like, I toss up my white flag and I'm ready to walk away and give up and say I'm done teaching, I'm done with this, something happens, and it's like I can't. It's like, even though I had already accepted defeat and then I'm walking away, it's like I can't. And it's so funny. I read this book that a lot of people are probably familiar with. It's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And
Uh-huh.
there was a story that stood out to me the most. And there was just one sentence that I just continuously hold on to. Um, and it's like, don't ever stop, because you could just be 3 feet from gold.
Yeah.
And then it also, so, like, I play on that, but then there, like I said, there are times where, like, my mind and my emotions and my need for satisfaction get the best of me, and I say I'm out.
Yeah.
And but the infinite spirit, or whoever is guiding this train of the universe, says, honey, you don't get a choice. You're not no, you're here. You didn't, and it's so funny. And it comes back to, I remember my husband's little sister. She's always like, I want to be what you are doing when you grow up. And I think about like how I even got into what I'm doing. And I was like, I didn't choose this. It
Yeah.
chose me. Like
Yeah.
I never,
Yeah.
this was, and I used to not feel that way. I used to think that I consciously chose all of this, but that's just not the truth when I think about it. I didn't choose any of it and I didn't create any of it. It came through me. It came through me
Yeah.
from something else, from
Yeah.
something bigger than me. And there were a few times where I would get caught up in like taking credit for all of it. Like I said, thinking that I was the one doing it.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
But the longer and the more that I'm in this journey, the more I realize I'm not necessarily choosing this path. This path has chosen me and it's got a death grip on me. And everything that's supposed to happen through it is
Yeah.
going to flow right through me, whether my mind thinks I can get out of it or not. And so that's what I've learned in terms of destiny and what's meant for you, and whether you are consciously choosing everything or not. It can feel like that. It definitely felt like that for a long time for me, that I was consciously doing everything, creating everything, choosing everything. But then it came to a certain point where I was shown that that was absolutely not true. Everything was choosing me and
Uh-huh.
coming through me from something else.
Yeah.
And it helped me step into the certainty that I am a spiritual being having a physical experience, and my destiny is my destiny, whether I want to be a hockey player and I'm meant to be a golfer or not.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, I remember I was having a conversation with one of my clients, and she's like, "You were just born to do this." I'm a postpartum doula. And I was thinking, I if you would have asked me when I was a teenager, if you would have told me what I do now, I'd have been like, "No, that is not what I want to do with my life." And the
Right.
same thing, like it chose me. But I was talking, to my client, and she's like, "Not everybody has that, Shannon." She's like, "I went to law school. I spent a lot of money and a lot of time. I still, in my mid-30s, don't know what I want to be when I grow up." So I feel like some people really know and are like, there's really nothing else they could do. It's like a finite thing that finds them and it locks in. And then other people, maybe they have like options. Maybe there wasn't like that one thing, but I think that's definitely the difference between like a job or career and a calling. When it's
Well,
a
and
calling.
what helped me, I feel like and like I said, everybody's journey is going to be unique and individual, but this is just where I feel like I want to take a moment to anybody that's, joining us or listening out there. Like if you are feeling called towards an inner healing or a self mastery or a self discovery journey, and you're feeling like other parts of your life are a little bit incomplete, like your mission or your purpose or your passions, or something in your relationships are just off. That inner healing journey changed everything for me. And what I've
Mhm.
seen over the past 4 years of working with hundreds of other women, guiding them through that inner healing journey, it always ends up helping that thing that they feel is off. And for me, I think it's because my main goal as a mentor or a guide or a leader for others is to help them pull the answer from within themselves. Like
Mm.
I am not the coach that's going to give you advice. I might make intuitive suggestions, or like intuitively I feel like this is happening from my experience. Let me see if that resonates with you. I might pull some of that out, but for the most part, I'm going to make you go inward, question yourself, and retrieve the answers and retrieve the you're going to unlock the expanded vision from inside of you, because you are the only one who has experienced your experience. I have not experienced
Yeah.
your experience. So I cannot take those hidden treasures and those puzzle pieces that you carry within you. You are a gold mine of hidden treasures. And that inner healing, self discovery, self mastery journey that I started with and let me just say this, when I started with that, I was just learning it for myself because I was going through a divorce. My dad had just died. I was becoming obsessed with self discovery and inner healing just for myself. not because I thought I was going to have a career in it. Never. That was
Yeah.
never my motivation when I joined, or not joined, when I started reading books and researching, and started practicing meditation and different things, from resources on YouTube or whatever I could find. When I started all that, I was just doing it for me so that I could get my shit together and stop ending up in situations, or let me rephrase that, because you don't stop ending up in bad or toxic situations, because that's not the truth. What you can do is now you can set better boundaries, and you can experience those hard times or those toxic situations a little bit differently so that they don't cause you to self destruct.
Well,
That's
yeah,
what
and
it
then
was for me.
eventually they don't show up in your because
Or they
your
happen a whole
if your
lot less.
yeah, your frequency is not on that vibe. So if they come in, they go out faster. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
they,
like
well,
I think as
yeah,
healers, like you were saying, the best thing that the only thing a healer can do for you is bring you back around to self.
yeah,
And my mission always has been when I'm working, either as a doula or a coach or a healer, I am basically an amplified mirror. It's the only this is like the superpower I have that like, oh, you're so good at this. No, I'm not. It's like this is a gift. It's not like a skill. It's a gift where I amplify as a mirror the worth of that person in front of me to the point that they can feel themselves through me
yeah,
because the, that is the only way to heal. That's the only way to expand, to be full of your own energy, understand, know yourself, love yourself. All other problems, every problem in this whole planet, collectively or on an individual basis, all comes from not understanding and knowing your own worth and loving yourself. And so there's nothing, we have information, we have concepts, we have ideologies, we have all of these things, tools to help. But in reality, like the best thing you could do, like the, the most power I have over someone else is showing them their own self, their own worth. So, I mean, it wouldn't even work even if someone, someone says, I can heal you, or, I can give you this and this and this, and you're going to be a okay. That obviously you cannot guarantee that because it's a personal
exactly,
journey,
exactly.
it's all you. You're the
My,
only one
you
who
know,
can.
I come from a background where mental health was not dealt with properly in my family. And my dad, set a very powerful example, and he didn't even know it, for me growing up, because he grew up with the diagnosis of, well, I grew up with him being diagnosed with bipolar. And it's my bias. No, he's not bipolar. He would do drugs. He would do, because he would only have these manic episodes after he had done a lot of cocaine or something like this. And so this idea of this chemical imbalance, to me, I never believed it. I never ever was like, yeah, yeah, he's bipolar, he's got a mental disability. But when he was in these episodes, I knew that all he needed was to get clean and to have support, to be loved, to be held, to be supported, all of these things. But they were like, nope, he's clinically crazy. Or if he wouldn't agree to go to a clinic where they were going to shoot him up with a bunch of drugs to make him like a zombie, and that were causing him to have different types of seizures. He would have very terrible reactions to it. So, of course, the last episode that he ever had before he died, he refused, and he had to go to jail because he refused to go to this clinic. But I didn't want him to go either. But what I realized at 18 years old was mental health is not being treated properly, and
It never has been because
neither
it's
of these
not really truly it's not really even understood because it's a
no,
spiritual thing. So
exactly. And
the only thing the medical system can do for mental health is contain.
Yeah.
There is no healing, there is no understanding, there is no helping you understand yourself, and therefore there is no besides cognitive therapy, but when you're talking about drugs and you're talking about institutionalized, you know, those things don't really do anything except for put a label on yourself, and other
Well,
people.
and I think it was I didn't know it at the time, but there were several moments like that when I would end up in situations where I was being attacked or abused by someone with some sort of diagnosis. And I remember I had a relationship with somebody who claimed to be borderline personality disorder. And they would have these episodes where they would kind of be a completely different person. It was kind of like a heckle, like a Jekyll and Hyde situation where I would get one version and then I would get another version. And I remember one time I was like ready to walk away and there was an instantaneous shift and all of a sudden the good person was back. And I watched it and it felt like a choice. It felt like a conscious choice for them to switch personalities. And then I started doing a lot of research and I got into the holistic side of things. And this was way before I became a coach. Like these are patterns in my life of me dealing with mentally unstable people abusing me and attacking me, and me being very curious about the whole situation and not really
Uh-huh.
believing these labels, and really me going in and kind of digging into what's really going on. And
Yeah.
it always came back to it's in your head. It's in your mind. It's a story that the mind is telling you and it triggers these things. And I'm like, so if we can just get the content that's in our mind, if we can become more aware of the content in our mind and we can become more aware of practicing different shifting techniques, because I saw that person do it. I saw her go from crazy to normal, whatever normal is, right? In 2.5 seconds from the beginning of the sentence to the end of the sentence. And I was like, it, it was so baffling to me, and I know that this can be triggering or whatever to it might be controversial to whatever science might be saying about mental health and how it's not controllable or whatever. But from my experience, they could have diagnosed me with ADHD, they could have diagnosed me with bipolar, borderline personality disorder. If I went into a doctor and told them half the things that I was experiencing or half the things that I was thinking in my mind, definitely depression, definitely suicidal. And so, but I learned at a very young age from watching what they did to my dad to shut
Uh-huh.
up.
That wasn't safe. Not
It's not
not
safe.
safe to
It's
talk
not
about
safe to
it.
be honest. It's not
Mhm.
safe to be honest about these things.
Yeah.
And then as I grew up, another theme that was very common for me was I was having these feelings and I was being quiet about it because I knew it wasn't safe to say it. And I wasn't alone. I
Yeah.
wasn't alone. I knew I didn't have a mental illness. I knew that I knew that I had content in my brain, my mindset, I couldn't see clearly. I was seeing through this little box and it made me feel like I was suffering.
Yeah.
And what inner healing and spirituality and these journeys of self-discovery and self-mastery, what they did for me was they helped me take my head out of that box that I was
Right.
in. And it helped me
Right.
see everything. And my world became colorful. And I used to do a lot of drugs. And I remember when I first started on my meditation journey and my inner healing journey, I was sober for 3 years. And my whole goal was I want to feel like I'm tripping without any type of drugs. And I got there. I got there.
You
I got
can. You can. You
you
can get
can.
there.
And
Yeah.
what colors were brighter and words, all of the words were beautiful. All of the people, even the bad people, so-called bad people, the problems of the universe, they were no longer problems. And it's like I was seeing through the lens of Jesus Christ or something. It was just so beautiful. And I mean, and that's where I am. It's a permanence. Once you reach that, it's a permanence. It doesn't go back to sleep. And it's a beautiful thing. And me and one of my clients yesterday were during our session, we were talking about how we might have days. We might have our days because we do. I have my days and my clients
We
have their
all
days.
have our
But
days.
once this awakens in you, those days or those moments where you go down into you're feeling dragged into the hell dimensions, you're going there for a reason.
It becomes
At
a
that
choice.
point, you start
Yeah, it
it
becomes a
becomes
choice.
Well,
And
not
I
I
would,
wouldn't call it a choice.
well,
I would
for
say
in my
it has to
experience,
happen.
I used to get really triggered and really pissed off when, like, I had my younger sister was like, "Depression isn't real. It's a choice." And I know because I was so depressed, and then I just I made a snap decision that I just wasn't gonna feel like that, and I've never felt like that again. And it used to infuriate me, because I'm like, "You don't understand. You can't just
Yeah,
snap yourself out like that." And, as time went on and as I healed, like, I learned myself,
yeah.
I realized it may not be a snap for me, but it is a conscious decision. You can control how you feel. The only thing that keeps you in that box is your mindset. Like, your mind has an override. We just maybe haven't been taught that, or we haven't experienced or practiced it enough. Um, and of course, there's all different levels. I'm sure there's, you know, I feel like mental health, or what's labeled mental health, is people who are tapping into more dimensions. They're dealing with more than
Yeah.
they humanly can have a capacity to process and untangle. That's
Well, and
my personal opinion.
that's what I was shown too. I definitely saw that as well, especially in my own journey because I struggled with mental health. Like I said, I could have been diagnosed with a whole laundry list of whatever they want to diagnose me with, but I refused to go in and whatever. And instead, I chose to go in and untangle all of that
Mhm.
myself.
Yeah.
And so within that journey of untangling it, I then understood all these voices in my head. And I was like, oh, and of course, like I had my own ways of doing it. Like I would label different things inside of my head so that way I could build a relationship with them. So, for example, the easiest way for me was through my emotions. And then, of course, as I got through my
It's
journey,
literally
it
the
got
only way.
deeper.
That's literally your emotions. I'm glad you said that, because that's just so anyone who's watching this who, like, wants to know the starting point, it's there. It's how you feel.
Yes.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
That is the only map. That's the only GPS.
Yeah.
Your feelings, how you feel, being understanding your feelings, that is step 1. That's step 1 and
Yeah.
always your roadmap.
Yeah. And that's really, the basis of what Soul Healer Institute, especially the beginner programs, the High Vibe Alchemy, the Manifestation Breakthrough, you can't get to the focus or the next step because that foundation, you have to, like, the foundation of those courses are all about what content is in your mind and
Mhm.
how aware and connected are you to your individual feelings and emotions. And it's building these relationships and connecting these wires that help you expand and get out of that little box. And I hear what you're saying. It was a choice to be able to switch back and forth. So what I mean by it's not always a choice, like for example, last week during the eclipse and Mercury in retrograde or whatever you want to call it, if that's even what it was affecting me. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But I was depressed or whatever. Like I wasn't depressed because I don't consider long form depression, but I was really like in my feelings or whatever. And it was almost like there was nothing I could do to change it. I had to ride the wave. I had to ride the wave and I had to get into this place where I had just accepted defeat for a moment. And then it was in that moment of surrendering into my defeat and just accepting, like saying, you know what if I am depressed? What if I am sad right now? What if I did fail? Why is that still okay? And every time I get to that place of what if the worst thing that I think is happening, it's true. And when I accept that, for some reason that transmutes everything and it starts the cycle back upward because
Yeah,
now
because you
when you
take
can
the
accept.
resistance. Yeah, it's the
Yes,
resistance that makes you feel bad, not actually
yes,
what's happening.
when you
Not
can. So I would say it's more so, I think sometimes it can feel like you can choose to switch into a new frequency or whatever. I've had that experience too, but I think the further along I get into my journey, the more my vessel is meant to experience the color of the rainbows of emotions.
of course.
And so my only strategy now, because I've already met all my emotions. I've already met all these different aspects and parts of myself, and I've already done all of that work. I spent years doing that work. And so I feel like I know myself really well. And then so now the next step in that process, after you know everybody or everything or every part of you, the next part of it is to stop trying to change, fix, or heal it, because you've already done that.
Uh-huh,
When you get to
uh-huh.
know it, you've already healed it, you've already seen it, you've already acknowledged it, you've already heard it, and now you're seen and heard, and now it's time to embrace and experience all of it. And they're like waves, so there will be waves where you go through these hard times and you just have to experience it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and
and
it's
I
the
and I
acceptance of it that
definitely
moves you through.
like that darkness always serves a purpose. Like I fully accept. I've learned to actually welcome when the darkness comes because I know what comes next. Like it's always a precursor to your
Yeah,
level up. So now I'm like, when it comes, I'm like, okay. But I mean, really what I should have said is resistance. Like you may not be able to shift your vibe right away. That takes a lot of practice and time and sometimes medicine. But when I say medicine, I mean psychedelics. But you can make a conscious decision in your head. You can make a conscious decision in your head, an acknowledgement to what can I do about this? I can go down this path, sit on anger or sit on disappointment, recycle these thoughts, talk about them to everybody else, hold this energy, or I can look for the Easter egg. I can do this Easter egg hunt, look for my little treasure inside the darkness, let go of resistance, let go of how it's going to go, how it's going to pan out
yeah.
and
I love that.
choose to not continue with the momentum that's making me feel bad. That is a
Yeah,
definite choice. Some of it
yeah.
is so for some people it's much harder than others. Some people they really do have a chemical imbalance where that makes, like PMS is a perfect example. Like what we can do emotionally, in the fertility ovulation phase and what we can our capacity in the PMS phase, like those are two
Sometimes
very
it is just what it is, and I think
sometimes
I
it is
love
just
that
what
we're
it is,
talking
and it's
about
not
this.
always as easy, but
Right. Well,
you do have power and control over where you're going to let the outside things take you with your thoughts
well,
and your
and
actions.
in one of the podcasts that I was in before, we were interviewing a woman who holistically helps women through menopause.
Mm,
And the whole thing was not about stop feeling symptoms of menopause, stop, let's pretend that we're not in menopause. The whole thing was embracing the menopause and accepting what is, because it's exactly right. The resistance and the judgment of what is the only thing creating the suffering.
mhm.
When you have the tools, and that's why it can be so helpful to have a mentor or a guide or a space holder to guide you and map and help you roadmap through that resistance and that judgment, because once the resistance and the judgment can fall away, then the experience can be experienced exactly the way that it was always meant to be experienced. So it's not that you're going to stop having menopause symptoms or PMS symptoms, it's you're going to experiencing them for what they are. And most of the time, for me anyways, once I do experience that thing that was considered bad for what it is, it then goes from this bad thing to this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I'm excited
Or
about it. I'm
surrender.
more, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just surrendering to it.
Yeah. I
And
think,
so
like, the surrender is, like, something that I think, like, human beings avoid at all costs. I think we've been taught from a very young age with stories and books or whatever else that, like, surrender means defeat, Surrender is really a war term, and it means you're no longer you're at someone else's mercy.
yeah,
We have, like, all these, like, thoughts that that word, points towards, but in reality, it's freedom. It is true freedom no matter what situation you're in. If you have the ability to truly surrender, that that's the key, and that's how resistance can be removed from the situation and therefore suffering. Then you're
Yeah,
just left with like the experience and
exactly.
it's
Exactly.
not the
And
crazy.
we want the experience. We don't realize it because there's so much resistance and suffering, but the truth is we want these experiences, and that's why the human experience is designed the way that it is. But when there's so much resistance and judgment, you can't experience it the way that it's meant to experience. And I think that we're coming up on our time now, so I'm going to wrap us up here really quickly. But there's a quote that came to me, and I've been using recently, and it's the art of unlearning everything your mind thinks it knows is
Ah,
actually the art of remembering everything that your heart has forgotten. And that is something that,
yeah,
I personally um, have really I can experience that, the truth of that, and my journey that I went on and then recreated so that other people could follow a similar path at Soul Healer Institute. That's the fundamental. That's the paradigm that Soul Healer Institute is really grounded in, is we're going to unlearn everything that our mind thinks it knows. We're going to relearn everything from a foundation of truth and remember everything that our heart has forgotten.
I
And
love that.
so with that, I just want to wrap us up here because we're a little bit past an hour. But I hope you guys enjoyed our little girl chats today, our raw experiences, our eclipse energy, um, the things that are coming up for us, just the truth about our journey and where we're coming and what we learn and what we experience and what can change. And so, yeah, I hope you guys will continue with us on this adventure in future episodes. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you next time.
Bye.